In this video, you're going to serve the file to the user. So first of all, we are going to address the general scenario, and then after that, we're going to treat specific scenarios where the file is, for example, an audio or video file or a PDF file and so on. So first of all, let's remove these lines of code. We don't need these anymore. So first, let's create an object for the headers. So we're going to store the headers inside this object. So I'm going to call it head. So the reason why I'm using an object here is because once we treat the general scenario and then we move to specific cases, then we're going to add some changes to this object. And this will make our code really well structured. So the next step is to set the response code or response status code. So let's use a variable status code for that. So again, I'm using let instead of const because this might change later on in the other scenarios. So for example, when you are streaming a video by chunks, then this will change. Now let's start filling our headers. So first of all, we've got the MIME type of our file. So we can use that to set what is called the content type header. All right. So we're going to do that for all file types. So inside the head objects, we're going to have a new property. I'm going to call it content type. And I'm going to set that to the MIME value. Now you will need to read the content of your file and then display it on the web page. Basically, you get the content and you send it in the response object. So let's do that using the fs.read file method. As you know, this method works with callbacks. So let's try this one and then try the promised version. So fs.read file. So the path of the file is going to be the full static path. And we are using the UTF-8 encoding. And then the callback is going to have two parameters, the error and the data, if we manage to get the data from the file. So let's manage errors first. So if error, we are going to change the status code of the response to 404. And then we can write something like 404 file not found. Or to be specific, we can just write file reading error. We can't say file not found because that was checked actually before this step. Okay, so here we're dealing with an error in reading the file. And then return response.end. Now, if there are no errors, let's have an else statement. So first of all, we're going to send the status code and the headers. So for that, you can use the method writeHead, which will take two parameters, the status code, and we can use that one, which we set to 200 by default, and the head object. And then you write the data on the web page using response.write. And finally, you return response.end. So it looks like there is an error somewhere. So I'm missing a parenthesis on line 110. So let's check this. All right, so this looks better. All right, now let's test our code and make sure it works. So let's try this file. And we get the correct contents of the file. Now let's try with something else. HTML file. Perfect. Now if you try with an image, it doesn't work. So here the browser is trying to display the image inline, but this method doesn't work for that purpose. So if you don't send the content type in the head or the headers, and you try again, then this works, but you will need to download the picture to view it. Now let's see if everything else is still working. HTML files, that's fine. So there is a limitation with this method, as you can see. All right, now let's have a look at the promises version. So all you need to do is change fs to fs.promises and then .read file, and then instead of having a callback, you can place the callback in the then method. Like that. Now let's catch the error at the end. And copy this code. You can also console.log the error if you like. And inside the then method, we only need the data portion, not both error and data. Right, let's save and test this with our HTML file. Perfect, still working. That's great. Now there is another method we can use instead of fsRead or fsPromises.read file, and that's streaming. Basically, fsRead file sometimes can be really slow, as the user will always need to wait for the whole file to be read before they get it displayed. So now we're going to use the streaming method, which will stream the content to the user. So the user doesn't have to wait for the whole file to be downloaded before they can have it displayed. So for now, we can comment this piece of code. And then write code for our streaming method. So to use this method, you can use a method of fs called createReadStream. So this method will take the full static path of your file. And also it can take some options. So let's create an options object. Right there. which we may amend at some points for the specific scenarios. So for now, let's uncomment this and keep the content type inside the headers. So let's store this, or the output of the method createReadStream. Let's store it inside a variable. Let's call it FileStream. Now that you created a read stream, you are ready to stream chunks of data to your response objects. So let's write a comment for this. Stream chunks to your response objects. So to do that, you can use a method of the object that you created, FileStream, and that method is called pipe. So pipe will take the response objects as a parameter. So you are piping or sending chunks to the response as you are reading them. Now you can send the headers before that using the writeHead method of the response. So sending the status code and the head objects. Now there are a couple of events which are attached to the FileStream objects which you will need to handle. So the first one is the onClose event. So once you close the FileStream, then this will mark the end of the response. So, and you will return response.end. So let's do that. So FileStream on close. So on takes a couple of parameters, the event and the callback. So in this case, you just return response.end. The other important event is when something goes wrong. So we've got close and error. Now it doesn't matter what order you write these two statements in, so let's write the error statements afterwards. You can also write it beforehand. So on error, we're going to have an error parameter, and we can decide what to write there. So for example, let's set the status code to 404. By the way, we can copy that from there. It's going to be very similar. So we're going to log the error and then write all that. And instead of file reading, I'm going to write FileStream error. Sometimes you are interested in the error code only instead of the whole error, so you can just write error.code. Now let's try our code and make sure that everything is working. So that one is working. Still working. Now let's check images. And now images are working as well. Now let's check HTML files with dependencies like styling and so on. So let's check this one. So that one is working. So images are working as well. And this one is working as well. Now here is a good question for you. When you try an HTML file like that one, which has got a CSS file in the source code, so that's styling.css, you can see that the decoration is working with this link. Now with our main templates, the decoration is not working, even though in the page source we've got style.css in the link. So I'll let you think about this, and I'm going to pause the video, and then once you've found the answer, then I suggest you come back to check. So hopefully you managed to find the answer. So hopefully you didn't go too far, because the answer is right there. So we're looking for style.css, and we can't find it in this path. And you can see that the path goes to the static folder and looks for the file inside the static folder. Now, if you try another folder, projects for example, then this time you still look in the static folder. But if you try another folder, like that one, then this time it's actually looking in static/projects/style.css. And the reason why is because if you check the source code, we're looking for style.css in the same directory as this folder, which is that one. And that means we're looking for that CSS file inside the projects folder. Now, if you try home and you check the source code again, then style.css, you're gonna look for that in the same folder containing this. And basically we are in the root directory. In our code, we appended this bit to all path names. All right. So that's why you end up looking inside the static folder. Now, if you click on projects and you look at the source code, we're looking for style.css in the same folder containing the projects folder. And that's the static folder as well. And that's why you are looking in the same location in home and in projects. All right. And you don't get any decoration because that file does not exist in this location. And it doesn't exist in that location either. And that's why the decoration never works. While if you try a file like that one, if I open this, the decoration is going to work because the styling.css file is in the same folder as that folder, right? So that's why the decoration works. So now we will need to fix this. So to do that, we're going to change the href attribute of the link element to the correct location of style.css. Now, if we look inside our folders, the template is right there and style.css is right there. And by the way, even though our template is there, when we use the template, we use it from somewhere else. We just get the data of the template and we populate it with whatever parameters we need. So style.css is right there. So let's go to index.html and change the path of style.css to project files /style.css. So let's try now. And this time it works. Right, in the next video, we're going to take care of specific file types like PDF, audio, and video.